Everything you thought you knew about American geography is wrong. The textbooks lied, the maps deceived you, and your teachers unknowingly repeated myths that have persisted for generations. These aren't minor details. These are massive facts that should have been taught in every geography class, but somehow got erased from the curriculum. Fact 25. The U.S. owns an uninhabited Caribbean island that Haiti desperately wants back. Navassa Island sits between Jamaica and Haiti, and the U.S. has controlled it since 1857 under the Guano Islands Act. Haiti has claimed the island for over a century, arguing it's historically and geographically Haitian territory. The island is completely uninhabited, has no resources, and serves no strategic purpose beyond denying Haiti's sovereignty over its own backyard. The U.S. refuses to negotiate or even acknowledge Haiti's claim. Navassa is now a wildlife refuge that nobody visits, guarded by the Coast Guard to prevent Haitian invasion. This tiny rock represents American imperialism at its most petty. We took it, we're keeping it, and we don't care about legitimate claims. The island has zero value except as a territorial claim that extends U.S. waters into the Caribbean. Fact 24. There's a part of Minnesota you can't reach without leaving the United States. The northwest angle in Minnesota is completely isolated from the rest of the state by Lake of the Woods. To drive there from Minnesota, you must cross into Canada and re-enter the U.S. The area exists because of a map-making error in the 1783 Treaty of Paris that drew borders based on incomplete geography. About 120 people live in this geographic oddity, cut off from their own state. Students there must cross international borders twice daily to attend school in mainland Minnesota. The northwest angle proves that American borders are products of mistakes and compromises, not logical geography. This isolated peninsula only belongs to the U.S. because nobody bothered to fix a 240-year-old surveying error. Fact 23. The U.S. government moved an entire town to build a weapons plant, then erased it from maps. Oak Ridge, Tennessee didn't officially exist during World War II, despite housing 75,000 people. The government built an entire secret city to produce uranium for the atomic bomb, removing it from all maps. Residents couldn't tell family where they lived, and the town had its own currency and armed checkpoints. Oak Ridge was the 5th largest city in Tennessee that officially didn't exist. Workers didn't know what they were building until Hiroshima was destroyed. The government can literally erase entire cities from geography when convenient. Oak Ridge only appeared on maps after the war ended, suddenly adding a major city to Tennessee that didn't exist for years. Fact 22. Alaska has a time zone where only 200 people live. The Aleutian Islands operate in the Hawaii Aleutian time zone, but only the westernmost islands use it. About 200 people live in this time zone, making it America's least populated. The time zone exists because Alaska's span is so vast, it requires multiple zones. These islands are closer to Russia than to mainland Alaska. The residents experience the earliest sunrise in America, despite being in the westernmost time zone. This geographic quirk creates a time zone for a population smaller than most apartment buildings. Fact 21. The U.S. has a desert that contains active sand dunes, moving 30 feet per year. White Sands National Park in New Mexico features massive gypsum sand dunes that are actively migrating across the landscape. The dunes aren't sandstone, they're pure white gypsum crystals that glitter like snow. These dunes bury roads and force highways to be constantly rebuilt as sand advances. The dunes cover 275 square miles and grow larger annually. White Sands sits inside a military weapons testing range, so parts of America's largest gypsum dune field are off limits because of missile tests. The dunes remain white because gypsum doesn't absorb heat like regular sand, allowing you to walk barefoot even in summer. Fact 20. There's an American city that exists in 2 time zones simultaneously. Phoenix City, Alabama sits directly on the Alabama-Georgia border, with the time zone line running through downtown. The city operates partially in Central Time and partially in Eastern Time. Businesses on opposite sides of the same street are in different time zones. Residents schedule meetings specifying Alabama time or Georgia time to avoid confusion. This creates absurd situations where crossing the street changes the time by an hour. Phoenix City proves that time zones don't respect municipal boundaries, creating daily chaos for residents. Fact 19. The U.S. controls more ocean territory than land territory. America's exclusive economic zone extends 200 nautical miles from all coastlines, giving the U.S. control over 4.38 million square miles of ocean. The land area of the United States is only 3.8 million square miles. America controls more ocean than land, yet nobody teaches this. The ocean territory contains valuable fishing rights, mineral resources, and strategic positioning. Tiny uninhabited islands like Jarvis Island and Howland Island give the U.S. hundreds of thousands of square miles of ocean control each. American territory is mostly water, not land. Fact 18. There's a spot in Montana where 3 rivers meet and water flows to 3 different oceans. Triple Divide Peak in Glacier National Park has a point where precipitation splits 3 ways. Water flows to the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean via the Gulf of Mexico, and the Arctic Ocean via Hudson Bay. This makes Montana hydrologically unique as the only place where a single raindrop could theoretically end up in 3 different oceans. The peak sits at the apex of North America's watershed. Stand at this spot and you're at the hydrological center of the continent. Montana contains one of the most significant geographic points in North America that most Americans have never heard of. Fact 17. The entire island of Manhattan was purchased for goods, worth $24, not $24 in cash. The famous $24 purchase of Manhattan is a myth based on a mistranslation. The Dutch traded 60 guilders worth of goods, which historians later converted to $24 using exchange rates. The actual transaction involved axes, cloth, and other trade goods, not currency. Moreover, the Lenape people who sold Manhattan didn't have a concept of private land ownership. They thought they were granting shared use rights, not selling the land forever. The purchase that supposedly created New York was actually a massive cultural misunderstanding, where neither party understood what the other thought was happening. Fact 16. There's a town in Alaska where everyone lives in a single building. Whittier, Alaska has a population of about 220 people. Whittier gets 250 inches of snow annually and is only accessible through a 2.5-mile tunnel shared with train traffic. When winter storms hit, nobody leaves the building for weeks. The entire community exists in one structure because the weather makes separate buildings impractical. Whittier represents the most concentrated town in America, where an entire municipality fits inside one address. Fact 15. The U.S. has more tornadoes than the rest of the world combined. America experiences roughly 1,200 tornadoes annually, more than all other countries combined. The unique geography creates perfect conditions. Warm Gulf air collides with cold Canadian air over flat terrain, with no mountains to disrupt the clash. No other country has this specific combination of geographic factors. The Great Plains create an unobstructed battleground for air masses. Other countries get tornadoes, but America's geography makes it the global tornado capital by an overwhelming margin. Fact 14. There's a U.S. state that banned billboards entirely. Vermont prohibited billboards and large outdoor advertising in 1968. Vermont chose aesthetics over advertising revenue, a decision that shaped the state's entire visual landscape. Driving through Vermont means seeing mountains and forests instead of advertisements. The state proves that geography can be legally protected from commercial visual pollution. Fact 13. The Great Lakes contain 21% of the world's fresh surface water. The 5 Great Lakes hold 6 quadrillion gallons of water, more than all other U.S. lakes, rivers, and reservoirs combined. Only the polar ice caps contain more fresh water. The Great Lakes are so massive, they create their own weather patterns and microclimate. Lake effect snow dumps hundreds of inches on nearby cities. These inland freshwater seas are large enough to have waves, tides, and maritime shipping channels. The Great Lakes represent one of Earth's most significant freshwater resources, and they're entirely in America and Canada. Fact 12. The U.S. has a tropical rainforest that receives 200 inches of rain annually. The Hoh Rainforest in Washington's Olympic National Park gets over 140 inches of rain per year, with some areas receiving 200 inches. This temperate rainforest rivals tropical rainforests for rainfall. Moss covers everything, trees grow over 300 feet tall, and the forest remains perpetually damp. Most Americans assume rainforests only exist in tropical regions, yet Washington hosts one of the world's few temperate rainforests. The geographic conditions created by Olympic mountains blocking Pacific moisture create this unique ecosystem. Fact 11. There are more people living below sea level in the U.S. than in the Netherlands. New Orleans and surrounding areas house over 2 million people below sea level. The Netherlands is famous for living below sea level, but Louisiana has normalized it for millions of Americans. The Mississippi River Delta has been sinking while sea levels rise, creating an increasingly dangerous situation. The levee system is the only thing preventing catastrophic flooding. Hurricane Katrina showed what happens when those protections fail. America has a major population center in one of the most geographically vulnerable locations on Earth. Fact 10. The U.S.-Mexico border wall already existed long before recent construction. Approximately 700 miles of the 1,954-mile border has had barriers since the 1990s. The Secure Fence Act of 2006 authorized extending the wall. Recent political debates portrayed the wall as new, but it's been progressively built for 30 years. The geographic reality is that much of the border is already walled, and the truly difficult terrain remains unbarriered because construction is impossible. Mountains, rivers, and deserts create natural barriers where walls can't be built. The border wall debate ignores that geography has always been the primary barrier. Fact 9. Alaska has a volcano that's been continuously erupting since 1983. Mount Pavlov in the Aleutian Islands has been in nearly constant eruption for over 40 years. The volcano regularly spews lava and ash, yet it barely makes news because Alaska normalizes volcanic activity. The volcano sits in such a remote location that eruptions don't threaten populations. Alaska has so many active volcanoes that continuous eruption becomes background noise. The state's volcanic geography creates conditions where permanent eruption is just part of the landscape. Fact 8. There's a lake in Oregon with no rivers flowing out, and it's the deepest in America. Crater Lake has no inlet or outlet rivers, sitting in a volcanic caldera that only fills from rain and snow. The lake is 1,943 feet deep, making it America's deepest. Water only leaves through evaporation and underground seepage. The lake's depth and isolation create some of the purest and clearest water in the world. Crater Lake formed 7,700 years ago when Mount Mazama collapsed, creating this geographic anomaly. The lake demonstrates that not all bodies of water need rivers. Some exist in complete hydrological isolation. Fact 7. The U.S. has more caves than any other country on Earth. America contains over 55,000 documented caves, more than any other nation. Kentucky's Mammoth Cave system alone has over 400 miles of surveyed passages, the longest cave system globally. New caves are discovered constantly, particularly in karst regions of Kentucky, Tennessee, and Missouri. The geographic distribution of limestone bedrock creates perfect conditions for cave formation. America's cave systems represent an entire hidden geography beneath the surface that most people never consider. Fact 6. There's a place in South Dakota where you can walk through an ocean floor from 450 million years ago. Badlands National Park exposes ancient seafloor from when the area was underwater. The layered rock formations show 75 million years of geological history in visible stripes. The Great Plains were once an inland sea, and the Badlands prove it through exposed sedimentary layers. Walking through the Badlands means traversing ocean bottom, that hasn't seen water for hundreds of millions of years. This geographic feature reveals that continental interiors weren't always dry land. Fact 5. The United States has a coral reef system that's dying faster than the Great Barrier Reef. The Florida Reef Tract is the only barrier reef system in the continental U.S., stretching 360 miles from Miami to the Dry Tortugas. The reef has lost over 90% of its coral cover since the 1970s. Rising ocean temperatures, pollution, and disease are killing coral faster than it can reproduce. The reef will likely be functionally dead within 20 years. Most Americans don't know the U.S. has a major coral reef system, let alone that it's collapsing. Florida's reef represents an entire marine ecosystem vanishing from American geography. Fact 4. The highest and lowest points in the contiguous U.S. are only 85 miles apart. Mount Whitney stands at 14,505 feet elevation, while Death Valley's Badwater Basin sits at 282 feet below sea level. These extremes are separated by just 85 miles, creating an elevation swing of nearly 15,000 feet over a tiny distance. California's geography is so dramatic that you can experience the nation's height and depth extremes on a short drive. This proximity demonstrates the extreme topographic variation in the American West. Fact 3. The U.S. government tested nuclear weapons, so close to Las Vegas that mushroom clouds were tourist attractions. The Nevada test site conducted 928 nuclear tests, just 65 miles from Las Vegas, from 1951 to 1992. The government assured residents the tests were safe, while radioactive fallout blanketed the region. Thousands developed cancer from exposure, and the area remains contaminated. American geography includes dozens of permanently radioactive sites from nuclear testing. Las Vegas exists in the shadow of atomic destruction that was marketed as entertainment. Fact 2. There's a piece of Florida that belongs to Alabama. Due to a surveying error, a tiny section of Florida's coastline legally belongs to Alabama. The 1819 border agreement placed Alabama's southern border where it met the Gulf of Mexico, but the survey was inaccurate. The mistake created a situation where Alabama technically has Gulf coastline in what looks like Florida territory. Border disputes like this exist throughout the U.S., revealing that state lines are approximations rather than exact geography. American borders are riddled with errors that nobody bothered to fix. Fact 1. The United States is slowly moving toward Europe at 1 inch per year. The North American tectonic plate is drifting eastward, moving the entire United States closer to Europe. In 200 million years, the Atlantic Ocean will close and the continents will collide, creating a new supercontinent. American geography isn't fixed. The entire landmass is slowly sliding across the planet's surface. Plate tectonics means that every geographic feature is temporary on geological timescales. The United States is actively moving, grinding, and shifting beneath our feet. Everything you think of as permanent geography is actually in constant motion. America itself is traveling across the planet, and eventually, the Atlantic Ocean will disappear entirely as North America crashes back into Europe and Africa. Your location is changing every moment, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Which fact completely changed how you see American geography? Drop a comment and subscribe for more mind-blowing truths they never taught you in school.